Hey guys, it's Ashley, and Rainbowthon has ended, which means it's time for a Rainbowthon wrap-up. I actually did pretty good this year. I did not complete my entire TBR, but I did reach the minimum goal of 4 books, so I am pretty happy with that. I also kind of made decisions to not read a book and to watch everything on YouTube on Saturday after work, so that came into effect, and so I'm not upset. So let me show you the books that I did get to. Going in order of color, my yellow book was Landline by Rainbow Rowell. I've read all of her young adult books, but I have not read any of her adult novels. So this was my first introduction to her adult world. And I did enjoy it. I liked it more than Eleanor and Park, not as much as Fangirl and Carry On, but it was a really interesting concept. I liked the idea that she could call and talk to her husband, her now husband, when he was, still a 20-year-old. I thought it was a really interesting concept and how she was using that to then try and fix her current day marriage. As with all of Rainbow's books, there was a lot of really good dialogue. There was not as much kissing in this book as I've come to expect from hers, but it was a really good read, so I believe I gave this 3.5 or 4 stars. It was good, but it wasn't my favorite of her books. I do have a full review of this. I don't think I've posted it yet, but it will be coming this week, so I will link that around once it's done. Then, for my orange book, I read James and the Giant Peach by Roald Dahl. This is, of course, going towards my year of Dahl. It's the first Dahl book that I have read in February, so that is exciting. This is about James, who through some awesome Roald Dahl magic, finds himself inside a giant peach with a bunch of giant creatures, and the peach just starts rolling around the world and goes on this awesome adventure. It was really fun. I think this is probably one of my favorite stories from Roald Dahl. I thought I had read this book, but apparently I haven't because it was all like a new experience to me. I do remember I saw the movie when I was in school, like really early school, probably like 4th or 5th grade, but I don't really remember any of these elements being in that movie, so maybe I'm gonna have to rewatch that. I gave this 4.5 stars, I think. It was just really, really cute, really fun, really silly, a great adventure. For my blue book, and I guess technically I could count it for green since I didn't get to green, is Steve Jobs Insanely Great by Jessie Hartland. This is a graphic biography of Steve Jobs' life. I do have a review for this as well. Again, I don't think I've posted it yet, but it will be up this week. It's not a very in-depth biography. I believe it's written more for young readers. It doesn't specify, but I think that's the case just based on some of the writing. But it just kind of glosses over some of the bad parts of his life and focuses mainly on the technology side of his life, which is why we all know Steve Jobs anyway. It's just a quick overview of how this boy went from being a boy to a computer genius. If you want just a quick glimpse into his life, this is definitely a book. If you want something with a little depth to it, then find a different biography. But I did enjoy this quite a bit. The drawings were fantastic. The way that it was told was really nice. If you're interested in Steve Jobs, this is definitely a good place to start. And the final book that I read for Rainbowthon, my purple book, is Welcome to Night Vale by Jeffrey Cranor and Joseph Fink. I loved this book so much. I don't know why it took me so long to get to it. Night Vale is such a cool, confusing, amazing place. I have been listening to the podcast for probably close to 2 years now, and it's just so amazingly weird. I love it so much. And the book just takes a deeper look into what life is like in Night Vale for people that aren't Cecil Palmer. Cecil is still there. You still have him mentioned, you still have little snippets of the radio shows, but the book is told from the perspective of 2 ordinary citizens living in Night Vale and something that's happening with them and the man in the tan jacket with the deerskin suitcase. If you're a fan of Night Vale, I think you will love this book because it's just more of the Night Vale weirdness we have come to love. And if you have not listened to Night Vale, I would recommend listening to the podcast first. I think you could read this without listening to the podcast, but I think you're going to be lost on some things. Whereas if you listen to the podcast, even though the weirdness isn't explained, you'll have a better understanding of how Night Vale works overall and what the characters are and what these things are, because they do make quite a few references to things that have happened in the podcast without going into any explanation of them. So I would recommend listening to the podcast at least up to Oak Doors and then reading the book. I think that just gives you a really good understanding of what Night Vale is like and some of the storylines that go into the past. For example, a sentence like, "This is Night Vale. Our mayor once led an army of masked warriors from another dimension through magic doors to defeat an army of smiling, blood-covered office workers. There is definitely another way." Not knowing what happened in the Night Vale podcast, you would read that sentence and be like, That's a weird thing. But if you've listened to the podcast, you are cracking up, you are celebrating, you are all sorts of emotions at that sentence, because that was like a giant plot line covering like 30 episodes in the podcast. So absolutely recommend that you listen to the podcast before you read the book. I think you'll be able to appreciate some of the little nuances to the story and some of the little details, and you'll find a much better experience if you're familiar with the podcast. Absolutely. Please listen to the podcast before you read it. And just listen to the podcast in general. If you've already read the book before you listen to the podcast, I don't care. Go listen to the podcast because it is amazingly awesome. I haven't filmed my review video of this yet, but it is coming sometime this month. Just know I absolutely love this book. 5 out of 5 stars. There is a second novel coming. I can't wait for it because I just really enjoyed this book. There were just so many little things to love about it. So there you have it. The 4 books that I got through for Rainbowthon. I had a really good reading week. Those were all really interesting books. I'm glad I read them all. If you participated in Rainbowthon, how did you do? If you've read any of these books, what did you think of them? Thank you so much for watching this video. I hope you've enjoyed it. I hope you have a fantastic day, and I will see you soon. Bye.